Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Slash Filmcast, the official podcast of SlashFilm.com. I'm David Chen, and with me are...
Your Hardwire.
Jeff Kanata.
And Christy Pechko.
Can we do that again? Devindra, your audio cut out at the beginning there.
Okay.
And with me are...
Devindra Hardwire.
Jeff Kanata.
And Christy Pechko.
Welcome to the show, everyone. What we're going to do here on this podcast today is we're going to talk about some what we've been watching action. We're going to get into a Slash Film Court segment where we adjudicate your film-related dilemmas. And then we're going to conclude with an in-depth review. This week we'll be talking about Deadpool 2. So that's what's on tap today. Find more episodes of this podcast at slashfilmcast.com. Email us at slashfilmcast@gmail.com. Before we get started, congratulations are in order. Devindra Hardwire, you announced this week on the Twitters and the Facebooks that you and your wife are expecting. Is that right?
Yes.
Woo!
Woo!
It's exciting. I watched Tully extra afraid, basically. the twist with that whole review was like, yeah, Jeff, I felt the same way you were, at least just more impending dread, because you knew what it was. I'm looking forward to it now.
That's funny, because after you and I saw Telly, I was just like, man, I super don't want kids. And I had no idea. Devindra was sitting on secrets.
It's exciting.
You're like, anyone who has kids, it would be a complete moron. You say that to Devindra, and then little did you know.
To be fair, I say that just day to day, but that's just
okay.
who I am as a person.
I also know many people who refuse to even, ponder the idea of having kids too. So I'm used to thinking about that as well. But I'm very excited. This will be a lot of fun and insane. Yeah.
Devindra, having met and spent a little bit of time with your wife, you are like me. You really are punching above your weight class when it comes
definitely.
to.
I'm just here for support, basically.
Yeah, so you guys are going to be great. I mean, she's amazing. You're amazing. You're going to have a wild ride, but man, you're going to be great parents. I'm so happy
thanks,
for
Jeff.
you guys. Yeah.
It's going to be awesome, Devindra. I can't wait to see how fatherhood transforms both you and the podcast.
It could be the end of the podcast.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I think it's very likely this is completely unsustainable.
It's already I was watching the trailer for what was that new movie? The one that was at Sundance, I think, with Nick Offerman. He's starting a band with his daughter. I was like,
something. The heart goes beat or something.
Heart
goes.
Yeah, and I felt like I was tearing up just watching that trailer because it's just that story. So yeah, it's happening.
It's already happening.
I love this.
It's
I'm on
already
board.
happening.
I think this is great. To be clear, I'm totally cool with other people having kids. Just me personally, I think is a terrible plan.
Oh yeah, most definitely. You'll be the cool one.
I like that you're like, I agree. You should not have kids.
Well,
I am also fine with people not having kids. We got an email a couple of weeks ago after the Tully review, and it was like, Jeff doesn't think people should not have kids. I'm like, no, I'm all for people not having kids. In fact, your life will be amazing if you don't have kids.
Well,
I get it. It's you did that thing where people who really love having children do that thing my mom does to me still, where she's like, you say that now, and I'm like, we are getting to the point where if I'm gonna have them, I should get on it. But cool. But no, I get it. You're enthusiastic.
Well, you know, Tully is a great thing to watch, Devindra, before you have kids. You know what another great thing is on my what we've been watching list that I didn't add to the spreadsheet today. I actually had a chance to watch Ali Wong's new special, Hard Knock Wife. Have you heard of this?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Ali Wong released a special a couple years ago called Baby Cobra that kind of single-handedly launched her out of obscurity. She's already had a very good career in show business before then, but I mean, not everyone knew who she was. Now everyone knows who she is, and that's something that she talks about in the new special. But in the new special...
I told you we watched Baby Cobra literally in the hospital waiting for our first child to be born. My wife and I watched that lying together side by side on the hospital bed waiting for labor to begin.
Nice. I think she had not yet had her first child in that.
She's pregnant. Very pregnant.
She's very pregnant. And this one, she's also very pregnant again. But this is her second child. And she's already had the first. It's kind of her
gimmick now, I guess.
Every time she's pregnant, she's going to have new specials. It can be great.
Yeah. And it's very, very amusing. And I'd highly recommend it. And she talks in graphic detail, not just about sex, which she did in the first one, but also about the physical challenges of having a child. And so definitely something that might be enjoyable to watch if you want to laugh at all the crazy stuff that's going to go down after you have a kid. But I find her to be very delightful and very raunchy and a very valuable presence in the Netflix comedy lineup. So I'd highly
tell you
recommend.
something, Dave?
Yep,
I didn't know you were going to bring this up, but literally last night, my mom is in town, just visiting, checking out our new baby and helping out around the house. And I do my video game podcast, DLC, last night on Sunday nights. And so my wife and my mom were just by themselves hanging out after I was in my office doing my podcast, and they decided to watch that special together. And as I finished my podcast and walking out, they had bonded. My wife was like, "It is so everything is so true." She's like telling the truth. It was yeah, she big fans of that, and they, especially as women who have given birth, were like, "Thank God somebody is." She said it's like every single thing she says is like describing our lives. I was like, that's a little scary based on what I know of Ali Wong.
Yeah, pretty much. But anyway, it's good to hear that Ali Wong's new special, Hard Knock Wife, gets a thumbs up from Jeff Kanata's wife, yes?
Yeah, for sure.
So Hard Knock Wife is on Netflix right now, and you should check it out. It's very funny, and I would not watch it with anyone's parents myself. You know, I'm not as brave as Aaron is, but
I tried watching the first one with my parents, and that was an experience.
Terrible idea. Terrible idea.
Lots of butt stuff in that.
You know what I would recommend that's actually really good? I think if you want to watch stand-up comedy with your parents is Kid Gorgeous. John Mulaney's.
Oh, yeah.
That's delightful.
Yeah, that's very, very clean, wholesome humor right there. That's another thing I've also recently watched, and it sounds like you have as well. Christy, you recommend that one?
Yeah, I was screaming. I was laughing so hard at that one. There's particularly one bit where he talks about he's like, I was talking to my mom and I asked her if she'd ever seen a ghost because I'm 35 and she doesn't I'm 35, I don't have children, and she doesn't understand my job. And I was like, hey John Mulaney, back out my life.
Yeah.
It's a really funny special. He builds to such great points, and like he makes this really brilliant analogy about the Trump White House that I think is pretty stellar. And it's just a very sharp, if you saw him on SNL, you saw part of the special because he does that as the opening. But it was just, it's a really neat act and very funny and just very self-deprecating without getting like too navel-gazy. I just thought it was really brilliant.
I thought it was pretty good. I didn't like it as much as some of his previous ones, but I thought it was solid, and I feel good recommending it. Jeff, what were you going to say?
I was going to ask you if you had a chance to see any James Acaster's.
I haven't had a chance to see James Acaster, but we've gotten so many tweets and emails from people saying, hey, I'm so glad Jeff Kanata recommended James Acaster's Repertory, or whatever it was.
Yeah, Repertory.
On Netflix. Yeah, I am still definitely going to watch it, so looking forward to that. But yeah, the other special is John Mulaney's Kid Gorgeous at Radio City, also on Netflix. You can check it out there. And speaking of Netflix and what we've been watching, I want to talk about this other thing I've been watching called Evil Genius, The True Story of America's Most Diabolical Bank Heist, which is a 4-part miniseries that hit Netflix recently. And, okay, so what this is about is a story, it's based on a true story, of course, a documentary about a true story in which a man walked into a bank wearing a bomb around his neck. And basically, like, the bomb was apparently clipped around his neck, and the people who clipped the bomb around his neck forced this man to rob the bank. And there's a lot of questions about whether the man was in on it or not, or whether he was actually, his life was in danger and he was trying to survive. And so it's a really fascinating story, this pizza bomber case that has made a lot of headlines, and there's a lot of footage about that day from that bank robbery in this documentary, Evil Genius. But overall, I thought this is probably one of the worst made documentaries I've seen on Netflix, and I've seen quite a number of documentaries on Netflix. I think there's a lot of problems, but I think the biggest one is the tone, which there was recently an Onion podcast that was released called A Very Fatal Murder, which was a parody of true crime documentaries and true crime podcasts like Serial. Serial is like who it takes most aim at. And whereas American Vandal kind of took the format of true crime and kind of spun it off into its own thing to create like a very unique and interesting work about journalism in its own right, a Peabody Award-winning work in its own right. That's American Vandal, right? A Very Fatal Murder is just straight up disdain for like the NPR audience, Serial, the people who created it. It is just like vicious, like ripping into them. And I thought it was very entertaining. But watching Evil Genius after listening to A Very Fatal Murder is like watching, Walk the Line after watching Walk Hard. You cannot take it. It's very difficult to take it seriously if you've seen a really spot-on parody of it, like the self-serious journalist figure who is going, like, seemingly obsessed with this case to an unhealthy degree. It just, like, tonally, it's ridiculous. And also, I just don't think it's particularly shot that well. But I know a lot of people, what I mean by that is it goes back to the same shots over and over again to tell this story that has, like, a lot of visual variety, theoretically a lot of visual variety. Certainly after a documentary series like Wild Wild Country, which, while it had many flaws, was really beautifully put together, in my opinion. I mean, this is just really lacking, in my opinion. So those are my thoughts on Evil Genius. But I know Devindra's seen a couple episodes. Christy, you've watched the whole thing. I've actually read
twice.
I've read a bunch of the stuff at Pajiba about this. So
I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah, your overall thoughts on Evil Genius.
Well, see, I'm kind of a sucker for these kind of shows. And this case is really interesting to me because, like, I'm from Pennsylvania, so I had heard a lot about the collar bombing case. And I don't know if you guys remember, but 30 Minutes or Less was a movie that came out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And, like, those people claim that it's not based on this case, which is lies. There is just no way you can watch that movie and not see the similarities to the real case, but whatever. But the collar bombing case is really interesting because at the end of the day, it's kind of like, did Brian Wells, who was the guy with the collar bomb, was he a part of it? Did he know what was going on? And I thought Evil Genius was interesting, though I feel like it still doesn't want to answer that question because I feel like it realizes how kind of tricky it is to answer that because legally it gets into all this stuff about if Brian Wells was complicit, then like you can't charge the people who did it for his death because he was part of it. It's very complicated and weird. But the thing I didn't like about it, I like a lot about it. I think it's an interesting story, but as you pointed out, it's also about the filmmaker's like obsession with the case, but he doesn't want to be a part of the movie. And I found that kind of disingenuous because what so much of that miniseries is about is him and Marjorie Deal's like weird friendship and how he got her to talk. But then like, we don't know why he was obsessed with this case. We don't know who he is. Like, I was trying to kind of find words to describe him. And I'm like, I don't know, the documentarian. But like, if you think of like The Jinx or Serial, you understand who the person who is spending all this time with the killer or could be killer is. And I felt like Evil Genius needed that context so we could understand who Marjorie Deal Armstrong is, because we need to understand who she is through his eyes to be able to filter out what's going on.
It is the most insane decision I've seen in a documentary in quite some time. It would be this is not the greatest example, but like think of like the magnitude of what I'm saying is like, imagine if Super Size Me didn't introduce Morgan Spurlock until halfway through. Like,
right.
It's like you think to yourself, well, that's impossible. That doesn't make any sense. That's exactly how I feel watching this film, right? Like,
right, because they tease it at the start, like that it's about Marjorie, and they tease about how he has this relationship with her, but then they don't get back to that until like halfway through the second episode.
It is just so bizarre. It's like the most ridiculous like editorial decision I've seen in a documentary in quite some time. So agree completely with you, Christy. Devindra, any thoughts 2 episodes in?
I mean, 2 episodes in, I think I've learned that this like genre is just not for me to a certain degree. Like, I really enjoyed American Vandal and kind of like how it ripped it apart. Because I was sitting here through the hype around Making a Murderer, and I slogged through 5 episodes of that show, and I just couldn't care less. Like, it was, I could see what was interesting about it, but I also felt like I was torturing myself watching it. So
no shame in realizing what you're not into, you know?
So there's that. I like Serial. That was like a fun journey that I think we all took together. Making a Murderer just didn't quite do it for me. This, I feel, is a little more, like, it's a little more straightforward. Like, it's more directly compelling, I think. But I agree with you on the tone things. Like, there's a point where you see somebody explode in this thing, and there's a splat sound effect.
And I didn't catch that.
I think there's a weird sound effect.
You're
that's just like,
you know,
I don't
why?
like
Andrea,
that
you were
they
the
showed
second
that
person to
moment.
bring that up to me today. Someone
Yeah.
direct messaged me on Twitter today, and they said, "Hey, I heard this splat sound effect during
Why
like,
would you
this
do that?
explosion, and it's the most ridiculous thing."
Yeah,
So I
at
don't
least-
think
Hey,
it's
guys.
yeah.
Yeah.
Not to spoil anything, but it works for Deadpool too.
it does. It
Yeah,
does.
so it sounds like you're not really into this genre as a whole, but I mean, I think this
but
is
is fine. Like I will finish it basically.
this is a really rough entry into the genre, in my opinion.
Mhm.
And also, I think Dustin at Pajiba wrote this great article about why, like, all this stuff that the documentary leaves
they
out
chose
as
to leave
well.
out,
You
yeah.
know,
Mhm.
so it just is. I felt like this really tried my patience, and I felt like disrespected as a viewer when I watched this. So not a fan, but I know a lot of people are checking it out, and it is a really interesting case. I just don't think this documentary does it honor, in my opinion. Christy, any closing thoughts before we move on?
No, I think you really summed it up. I've told people it's a must see if you're a true crime fan, because it is a case that is very fascinating. But if you don't like the way the storytelling is going, I can also recommend the podcast Case File. They did a really good summation of a lot of this information.
Okay, I'll definitely check that out. Yeah, I mean, yeah, it felt like Errol Morris. This is not, you know what I mean? Like, it's just
Yeah.
not. Just doesn't have
Yeah.
even like the stylistically it doesn't even have the chops.
No,
as,
not at all.
As a decent true crime documentary. So
Yeah, the story is interesting, but it's like I said, it's like it feels like there's a big piece missing.
agreed. Okay, well
You
that's
guys think it would have been better with like a slow trombone sound effect?
Yeah, that's right.
Honestly,
Yeah.
it really bothers me that they showed the footage of the explosion. Like, I know they say
Yeah,
they blurred it.
yeah.
It's still very traumatizing.
I would
Yeah,
say cut
it's
to
upsetting.
black or something. Yeah.
It's in the
Yeah,
first
I don't
like
think
few
you needed
minutes.
to see that.
This is in the first few minutes of the.
No,
of
it's the
miniseries.
second episode.
No, I think I'm pretty sure you see it in the
It's
first.
in the
one.
first,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's in the first episode.
Is
So
it? I know
Yep.
they tease it in the first, but I thought they'd. Okay,
Crazy.
pardon
Yeah.
me.
It's
It's been
crazy.
a bit since
Yeah.
I've seen it.
yeah. So anyway, that's Evil Genius. It's on Netflix. I didn't like it at all. All right, Devendra Hardo, what have you watched this week?
I saw this movie called Office, and it's a 2015 film directed by Johnny To. This guy, Chinese director, best known for like gangster films and action films. This movie it's a musical. It's kind of a dance musical about corporate work in China around the financial crisis. So in 2008. And it's just I was kind of intrigued by the premise of what this film is about. And I also saw it's based on a play, or I think like a musical that Sylvia Chang, the actress, did, and she's also starring in this movie. She wrote the film. It has a great cast, and also Chow Yun-fat's in this too, as a sort of like the head of this company, right about as they're going to go IPO. It's a big bombastic musical about capitalism and the state of overwork and just living through the corporate drudgery of modern life. It's a really interesting film, and it's fascinating too because Johnny To, this is a guy known for big gigantic set pieces. This is a movie filmed entirely on one set. It seems it's kind of minimalist. They can change it around for different scenes, so it feels a lot like a stage play. And you kind of have to, believe in the artifice of that whole thing, because there'll be like a storm, a monsoon or something, and it's clearly on a stage. Really beautiful design, well acting. I thought it was just an interesting look at a crazy life right now, crazy corporate life, and also really strange to see Johnny To doing something like this. This is a strange movie. I don't think it's widely available. You may have to import a DVD or something.
How did
But
you
I saw
watch
it
it,
at
Devendra?
I saw it at the Metrograph Theater here in New York because
Oh, nice.
Sylvia Chang was here showing off her new movie, Love Education. So she was there premiering that, and they showed off this. This movie was actually supposed to be in 3D as well. So just the idea of a 3D Johnny To musical with Chow Yun-fat just really got me in there.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, the 3D wasn't working by the time they were ready to screen it. But the film itself is really interesting and just really fascinating to see this guy kind of play outside of his typical genre.
When I look this up on Amazon right now, the movie Office, directed by Johnny To, there is apparently one copy available on Blu-ray. So yeah,
this is like a Yes Asia purchase, basically.
Yeah,
Like
exactly.
I remember, when I had to import a lot of movies. This is not widely available. I think it would do really well on Netflix or something like that, though.
Yeah. YesAsia.com, by the way, is where Devindra and I bought a lot of Asian movies when we were,
Yeah.
at least when I was in college. I used to use that site all the time. But the movie's Office, it's by Johnny To. It sounds like you recommend it, right, Devindra?
Yeah, it's really fascinating and just a lot of fun too.
Jeff Kanata, hit us with what you've been watching.
Well, lots of TV. In fact, I wasn't on the show last week, but last week was a flurry of news about shows that were picked up and canceled, and what was making it, what was getting a new season, and what wasn't. And one of the shows that regular listeners will have heard me talk about numerous times, Last Man on Earth, Will Forte's show about that very thing, being the last man on Earth, and then the wacky things that happen. Sounds like it is not coming back. And I wanted to mention it again, I guess, for the last time. Although I think it's an interesting topic to maybe discuss a little bit about all of these weird second chances that shows are getting. It's a strange thing that now a show can kind of live on multiple networks, and one network will cancel something, and then another network or another streaming service, for example, will swoop in and pick it up and give it new life. I mean, it's
happened before, but I think so you're specifically referring to Brooklyn Nine-Nine, which was canceled amongst this whole batch, and then a couple days later NBC picked it up.
And it sounds like The Expanse might be another one that might be getting second life through Amazon. Nice, so it feels like this is this weird thing that everybody kind of holds their breath for their favorite shows that have been canceled to see if this is going to happen or not happen. Last Man on Earth, it hasn't been announced yet, but I'm still crossing my fingers a little bit. Last Man, though, is another example of this. It's like just switching networks instead of being canceled. It's a strange place to be in where these things are, you have this potential of a show just moving rather than being eliminated.
Because there's so many platforms for content now. Like this happened to Scrubs back in the day, and we joke about when Scrubs went to ABC and it was not good after that. Futurama, same deal. Like after the Fox cancellation and everything. So this has happened before, but it seems like it's happening a lot now, just because I think a lot of these platforms are just hungry for content too. Like most of the stuff we're just seeing on Netflix are just like, they just have to release a movie, something with moving pictures and actors you recognize. It doesn't have to be good. They just need something for people to click play on.
Well, and any built-in audience at all is a benefit, even if it's not big enough audience to sustain life on a major network anymore. It's still an audience.
And it seems like places like Hulu and Netflix might have the advantage there because they can already tell how big the audience is based on how many people are streaming the episode.
Right.
Yeah.
Anyway, Last Man on Earth is really a delightful show that I have enjoyed over many seasons. When it first premiered, it felt like a show that was going to be canceled immediately, and the fact that it had 3 seasons is probably 4. Is it 4? Even better.
That's a good round.
The fact that it even got that, I think it beat the odds as far as I'm concerned. It felt so quirky and so smart and so different.
And it kept transforming. Like, it's such a bummer that where we're at now in this plot has gotten so damn interesting. And
yeah, I've never seen a show that literally every season they're in a completely new location with completely new dynamics between the characters. Really smart. It's one of those shows that I can't imagine anybody just like tuning into Fox on the night that it's on and understanding what the hell is going on at all, because it is very sequential storytelling. But maybe that's what worked against it. And like you're saying, Christy, where we got in this last season, it ends with a cliffhanger. It's such a crime that we're not going to even see where it goes, but it's consistently been a show that's kind of derived its humor from positivity and warmth among its characters rather than people sniping at each other, which I really admire. And I don't know, it's sad to see it leave TV landscape if in fact it is leaving. I'm still holding out a bit of hope that we'll see a last minute savior come in, but
I could see, it seems like an expensive show. Even though it's like so threadbare, sometimes they do things that seem like they could be expensive.
Yeah, and the set keeps moving, and I mean, I could see where there would be expensive challenges to it.
But
and I mean, the guest stars, it's just like randomly, like here's Will Ferrell, here's Kristen Wiig, like it,
It's so great. And also shout out to Brooklyn Nine-Nine, by the way. Like, if you are not watching that show, what are you doing with your life? You need to be watching Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
Obviously, nothing of importance.
Nothing of importance. The world is a hellfire, and Brooklyn Nine-Nine, and The Good Place, another Michael Schur show, right? Both like are just these like pure founts of joy. You should be watching them.
I recently watched all of season 1 of The Good Place and loved it, and could not believe where that season 1 ends up. I haven't started season 2 yet, so don't spoil anything.
Season 2 even better.
I'm excited.
That's all I'll say, but I love The Good Place. The Good Place, like Devindra said, it's totally something to watch if you've had like a rough day. Like The Good Place makes you feel like there's hope. Like if these screwballs can find hope,
trying to be better.
Yeah,
it's a show that it took me a few episodes to really fall in love with, but once I did, I trucked through the whole first season, and I'm excited for second season. But yeah, a delightful show that doesn't feel like anything else out there. It has its own whimsical sensibility and sort of a stylized universe that's really fun.
Right.
But none of those, in my opinion, compare to my favorite half-hour comedy on television right now, which is The Detour. I've talked about The Detour several times before. I adore this show. It is crazy and over the top and wild, and another show that reinvents itself every season. I just finished watching season 3, which is on TBS. Do people watch TBS? I hope so, because this show feels like it's kind of languishing in on TBS in anonymity. But it did get picked up for a season 4, which is very, very cool, because it also ends on kind of a cliffhanger. The Detour is the perfect show to binge because their seasons are structured where every episode sort of starts with a flash forward and then they flash back for the meat of the episode. And so you get this wonderful through line in 2 timelines of like the present day and the story that they're telling that happened earlier. And the way those things play against each other and mess with your expectations is so smart and so fun. I highly, highly recommend people checking out The Detour. So season 3 just finished. I'm sure it'll end up on streaming services, but I think TBS also has an app that is probably terrible.
All right, that's The Detour season 3, and in addition to Last Man on Earth, that's what Jeff's been watching. Jeff, we also were hoping to get you on to the podcast last week to talk about Barry. You couldn't make it, but sounds like you did finish the season, right?
I did. I have yet, unfortunately, to listen to your in-depth commentary about it. I'm looking forward to listening to you guys discuss it. I wish I could have participated, but man, I loved Barry. I just thought that show.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, it starts out in a place that seems really silly, kind of, and just gets deeper and rawer and more intense and more about something real in every episode, and ends with this crescendo. It is a really amazing piece of art, I think, that's kind of living in this weird format that doesn't even fit the tone. It's a strange mix of really daring black humor, dark humor, and serious drama. That those tones you can't always pull off together like that, but this show does. And I have a particular affection for it as somebody that moved to LA to be an actor and have lived through those exact acting classes. I mean, there is very, very little exaggeration in that show. You think that it's over the top and wacky, and I have done 99.9% of the things in that show. I have met people exactly like those people. It's spot on, and I think actually makes a really interesting observation about the idea that the 2 professions where you sort of have to kill yourself inside in order to do them well are being an actor and being a hitman. I think it's a pretty astute observation.
Very little difference between those 2 professions.
But it is an amazing show on a lot of levels. I think like the last episode is crazy. It feels like there's an entire second season done in like 20 minutes at the end of the last episode.
Yeah.
There is I think episode 2 or 3, there is the most amazing illustration of Me Too, the Me Too movement, just kind of presented without comment and so exquisitely expressed, I think, of what women, especially in Hollywood, have to deal with. It is a really amazing show that the first episode I watched, I was like, oh, I don't know, this kind of feels like it's making fun of this thing. I don't know, it feels weird. But man, does it get really, really good. And it shows Bill Hader to be, I think, a creator and a performer of real depth. And as much as I admired him previously, I don't know if I would have categorized him that way before this. And it's a real, I think, progression in what can be a standout career from this.
Agreed. That's HBO's Barry, and you can check it out on HBO Now or HBO Go. Yeah, it's really good. I'd recommend it. I agree. The first few episodes were like, I don't know about this, but then it really got pretty brilliant by the end. So, yeah. Christy, you checked out Barry yet? Or
I haven't seen it yet. I have to borrow someone's HBO login and catch up.
All right. Well, that's Barry, and that's what Jeff's been watching. Christy, you've been watching a couple things, right?
I have. I've been catching up on Killing Eve because it was one of those shows that everyone's like, "You're watching Killing Eve, right?"
Yeah.
And my response was, "What channel is that on? I don't have that." But I caved this weekend and I bought it on iTunes, so I am almost caught up. But Killing Eve, Being Eve is a New Zealand YA show that my friend was on ages ago. But sorry, Killing Eve is on BBC America, and it is Sandra Oh plays a woman who works for the British government, and she thinks that she has uncovered a series of killings that she believes are all related to an assassin that they don't know the identity of yet. And she's kind of obsessed with this assassin, and it's like almost sexual, her attraction, but to call it sexual kind of undermines what's actually going on. It's very, I don't know, like as a woman who really likes true crime stuff, I felt really connected to it because it's not, it's this intangible thing that you're fascinated by these things, but it doesn't mean you like them or you approve of them. It's a bizarre fascination. And what this show does is it takes that kind of fascination and like tangles it out into this really twisted tale of cat and mouse, where both of these women are cat and mouse, honestly, because one is hunting for the other. And eventually when she finds out she's being hunted, the assassin starts hunting back. And it's really interesting and exciting, but also it's written by Phoebe Waller-Bridges, who wrote Fleabag and starred in Fleabag, and also who is in Solo as the robot, which I won't say anything else about that because I know you guys are reviewing that next week. But she's great is the short answer. I wish she was on the show too because I'm just obsessed with her. But you can really feel her sensibility in the show because there's all this tension going on, but then there's these beautiful moments of character and levity where, you know, like coworkers will just be like taking the piss out of each other and stuff. And yeah, I ripped through most of the season yesterday, and I would have finished it tonight, but then I was like, we have the podcast, so I'm still a couple episodes behind. But it finishes up next Sunday, and I'm really excited. I think it's a really thrilling series, and as I understand it, they already have a second season promised.
Thank God. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's just incredible. Like Sandra Oh is amazing in the lead role, and it's really exciting to get to see her play a part like this that is so complicated and so weird. And you know, the fact that she is an Asian woman has nothing to do with anything. It's part of her character, but it's not like, you know, it doesn't define the character. So it's like I read an interview where she said when she got the script, she read the pilot and called her agent and said, yeah, but what role do they want?
What part is for me in this? Yeah.
Right. And they were like the lead. And like, it just never occurred to her because this is like, you know, it doesn't tend to happen, but she's so good in it. And it's like exactly the kind of part you're like, yes, this is why Sandra Oh needs more work because this is amazing. Like she's nobody's sidekick. She's so good in this. But then conversely, Jodie Comer, who plays the assassin in the show,
her name is Villanelle, by the way. It takes a certain amount of chutzpah to really sell the villain.
Well, it's like based on a comic or based on a novel, and it feels like a novel thing. Like
but it's kind of great too. It's like this great little flourish where they could do that.
But she's amazing because she has all these transformations when she goes to kill and stuff like that. And like she's a very strikingly beautiful girl, but they managed to costume her in ways where you could also totally understand her being someone who would slide into a crowd. It's just phenomenal. And her performances, she's shifting accents and shifting languages, and the physicality is so impressive.
But what she does too, like we've seen like this badass female assassin thing before, but she plays the character as this like very competent assassin, but also like a petulant teenager sometimes too. And it's this really interesting combination of a character who's just like, oh, you just don't know how to be human. You don't know how to be like an adult. And it's like she's definitely a sociopath on a certain degree, and it's just fascinating to see her work, basically.
It's also really interesting because they introduce it more in the earlier episodes, but you watch her study people and figure out how people are supposed to act.
Mm-hmm.
And like the very first scene in the entire series is her watching a child eat ice cream. And she tries to smile at the child, and the child does not smile back.
Yeah.
And then someone else smiles at the child, and she mimics that smile, and the kid smiles back. And it's like immediately sets up this idea of her like trying to like learn how to acclimate.
Mm-hmm.
And it puts you on edge immediately because you want to be charmed by her. She is this beautiful woman who is smiling at us, right? But at the same time, there's just something off.
She's gonna kill you. She's gonna kill you
Right.
the moment the first moment she gets.
I think for me, there's like a moment in the first episode where Sandra Oh is talking about how this man was assassinated. And she's like, they stabbed him in the femoral artery in his leg, and he didn't even realize until a couple minutes later he had been stabbed. And she is sitting at home and looking up online where the femoral artery is, and she's like putting a kitchen knife to her own leg, just kind of trying to figure it out. And it's like it's extreme, but it was also like, I don't know, I thought like, okay, I want to go on this ride, because it felt like I said, like it feels like if you have a true crime obsession, this goes, I got you, but we're gonna go further. And I just think it's a really thrilling and very interesting and weirdly funny show.
Yeah, it's like if Heat were sometimes funny, and some it's sort of like a comedy and sort of like a great family story at times too. Like it is many things.
Cool. Well, that's Killing Eve, and it's available on BBC America, and it is on my to-watch list. So I've heard great things about it. I don't know if I'll have time to get around to it, but it's definitely something that I will try to make happen.
Duck spoilers and then catch up on it when you can, because I think it'll, it's actually really fun to binge, because like sometimes it ends on a cliffhanger, and I hate cliffhanger episodes. So it's like less Westworld. I just go through.
Is there an easy way to watch it?
I mean, I bought it on iTunes. It was
iTunes, yeah.
I think it's available on YouTube TV, which is something I'm sharing a family subscription on.
Well, yeah, because that has the channel. So if you subscribe to Sling or whatever,
login, it's all on BBC America's website. But I'm a cord cutter, so I don't have all that.
Yeah.
Well, again, it's Killing Eve, and Christy, I think you've been watching one other thing, right?
I have. So coming out this week is How to Talk to Girls at Parties, which is based on a Neil Gaiman short story. But John Cameron Mitchell and screenwriter Philippa Goslett went real different direction with it. Like, the original short story is neat, and it's basically about a boy who goes to a party and meets an alien girl. And this takes that basic concept and spins it into like the idea of chakras and the idea of like punk rock and who are we as teenagers, and how the sexes do seem impossible. And it takes on a lot. But yeah, this boy and his two friends break into this like cool party, and everyone seems impossibly cooler than they are. And then they eventually realize that they are surrounded by a bunch of aliens. And it stars Nicole Kidman as this like over the hill punk goddess who like knew all of, she's like, I knew Johnny Rotten, I knew them, but like they all got famous and she's still kind of stuck in this shitty little town. And then like, Elle Fanning plays an alien, Ruth Wilson plays an alien. It's a very, I mean, if you know John Cameron Mitchell stuff, he did Hedwig and the Angry Inch, and it's like I wanted it to feel like that. I wanted it to feel like rock and roll had somehow been contained. And like when you watch Hedwig and the Angry Inch, it feels like live music is being created in front of you. It feels kinetic and spontaneous and exciting. And How to Talk to Girls at Parties feels cute, which was a bummer. It's not that it's bad. It's just, it feels more nostalgic than like urgent. And it's like, the way they talk about punk music makes punk music sound cute, and like it's just the music of teenage rebellion instead of the music of revolution, which is weird because the plot is very much more about revolution. But I don't know, it's like it seems like they took this concept and had this big idea, but then it just becomes this kind of manic pixie dream girl story where he like teaches her about punk and she teaches him about like the universe. And I don't know, it's parts of it are quite charming, but it's a very weird movie that, like, I'm glad I saw, but I also just wanted to be more rattled by.
Sounds like it was a bit of a letdown, and that's a bummer. But yeah, this movie is clocking in at 39% Rotten Tomatoes. Sounds like a lot of critics agreed with you, Christy. But the movie is How to Talk to Girls at Parties. It's an A24 release. I assume it's out in limited release right now. Is that right?
It's going to open Friday.
Oh, it's going to open Friday. Okay, cool.
Hey, Dave.
Yes?
Do you know what doesn't have any Rotten Tomatoes?
I don't know, Jeff.
HelloFresh.
That's true. That is true. What is HelloFresh for those who don't know what that is, Jeff?
It's a place where you get fresh tomatoes, among other things. HelloFresh is a meal delivery box. You get recipes and you get fresh ingredients delivered right to your door, and then you cook it. And I'm telling you, this has changed my life. I did not consider myself to be a person that could cook. I did not consider myself a person that would enjoy cooking. But the fact that I don't have to figure out what to cook, find a recipe. I mean, even take out the entire world of cookbooks. Just getting online and trying to decide what to cook on a given evening or day or whatever, it's crazy. Even if you're like, oh, I feel like chicken. You put in chicken recipe, 8 billion recipes come up. It's overwhelming. It's exhausting. HelloFresh has delicious recipes that are easy to prepare. You can do them most of the time, 20 minutes, 30 minutes. These are really quick, easy recipes. And then they give you all the ingredients you need in cool, self-contained little packages in your box. So you just pull out the little sack that has everything needed for that recipe. You can put it right in your fridge, and then when it's time to cook it, pull it out. It's all right there in pre-portioned little bits that don't lead to a bunch of waste, because you're not going to the store and buying a bunch of ingredients that you only want for one recipe, and then you have a whole bunch of extra cilantro or whatever, beets. I don't know what you cook, but whatever you cook, that you get just the amount.
Extra cilantro
need.
is a terror, Yes, it is a huge problem.
You never have too many beets, but cilantro.
Agreed.
Yeah,
agreed with everything you just said. Yep.
So with HelloFresh, you eliminate waste. You get just what you need. You don't have that rotting stuff happen in your fridge. And it makes it so easy. And I have actually become a person that loves to cook. It's delivered to you in recyclable insulated packaging, which is cool. And you have 3 different plans to choose from: classic, veggie, or family. So you have a variety of things to choose from. And the recipes, I'm telling you, are so good. And you will feel – I predict you will feel, because I have experienced this, you will feel such an amazing sense of accomplishment that you prepared your meal. You will eat better because you know what goes into your meal. It's fresh ingredients, not full of preservatives and garbage from eating out all the time. You'll spend less time planning meals and grocery shopping. This is a great thing. And even better, we have a cool deal for you because you listen to the /Filmcast. For $30 off your first week of HelloFresh, visit HelloFresh.com/Filmcast30. So that's $30 off, Filmcast30, and enter promo code Filmcast30. That's HelloFresh.com/Filmcast30 and promo code Filmcast30 for $30 off your first week of HelloFresh. Give it a chance. Give it a try. I bet you will find that it changes your life as it has changed mine. I prepare meals for my family. I feel like a better father and husband, and I love cooking. I enjoy it. I dig it. I did it tonight. Right before we started recording, I prepared a meal for my mom and my wife, and it was delightful. So give it a shot.
All right. That's what we've been watching this week. Why don't we move on to our let's do this again, guys. Sorry. I'm all tripped up. The magnitude of that HelloFresh ad really knocked me off my game, Jeff.
Thanks, man.
All right, let's move on to our next segment, the /Film Court. The /Film Court, for those who don't know, is the quasi-weekly, quasi-monthly segment where we adjudicate your movie-related dilemmas. We haven't done one in a while, so I thought, hey, folks, let's put one together today. This one's a classic. This one's, we all know, we're all going to know. Actually, we might have different answers for this. Maybe. We'll see. But you can always email us your film-related dilemmas at /filmcast@gmail.com. And I really like this one because I think it gets to the heart of what the /filmcast is all about. This one comes in from Jenna B. from Albuquerque, New Mexico, who writes in, "Hello, /filmcasters. I'm currently sitting in the theater waiting for the premiere of Avengers Infinity War with my husband and 2 friends. We came to the theater early to get the best seats and thus ended up sitting in the theater chatting for over an hour. As the theater starts to fill up, the conversation turned to Westworld, of which we are all huge fans. My husband and our friends started chatting about their theories and spoiling major plot details from Season 1 of Westworld. Please also note that my husband and one of our friends are teachers and have very good vocal projection. I'm starting to worry that the people around us are being spoiled. My husband brushes this off as being paranoid and said, if they haven't seen it yet, then they'll have no idea what we're talking about. So I ask you to lay it on your judgment, /filmcast. Is it okay to talk loudly about spoilers for a show that is over a year old in a theater where over 100 people are trapped with you? On one hand, we are in public and have the right to have a conversation about our shared experiences. On the other hand, everyone around us showed up early to get great seats and have no choice but to sit there and bear the spoilers."
My favorite part of this is imagining the vocal projection happening when she says, honey, people might be hearing, don't worry. If they don't know, if they haven't listened, they won't know what we're talking about.
Yes, precisely. That's a very good impression of this listener, this writer's
This is
husband,
actually
I'm sure.
Jeff's wife writing
Yeah,
in. That's
exactly.
the problem.
So,
Tip of the tongue to the top of the teeth.
so
I will say what I think about Westworld.
So I was in line for A Quiet Place the other day, and so I sometimes go see movies at our local theater, the Admiral Theater, in West Seattle, and it's a very small theater. It's like very tiny. The sound and video quality is adequate. It's enough for me to go see like an action film there and not feel let down. So, but there's big lines. Like the way they process people is very inefficient. And so there's huge lines, people waiting in line to buy tickets, people with who already have tickets waiting in line to get in. And all of a sudden, they let out Avengers Infinity War. So like Avengers Infinity War, all these people streaming out as I'm waiting in line. And they're talking about the plot. And this father is with his family. And they're talking about the plot of Infinity War. And as they start getting more into detail, the father says to his kids, "Wait, kids, remember what I told you. Wait until we're out of earshot of the theater to talk about it." Right?
Oh,
That's great.
I
That is
literally
good
just was
parenting.
like, "Thank you, sir." I like stepped out of line and I said, "Thank you,
Did you
sir."
start slow clapping?
We had a
Like
yeah,
to
we
start
had
the slow clap.
we had a little we had a moment where we had the eye contact and I acknowledged him and he understood that I was acknowledging him. It was brilliant. And
That's very good.
I'll just tell one other brief story. I was in an elevator, and I got in an elevator at work. And again, Avengers Infinity War came up. I was talking with a friend, and this...
Those same kids walked into the elevator.
No, it was this other woman was in the elevator with us, and he was like, "So, what'd you think about Avengers Infinity War? Like, how about that ending, huh?" I'm like... And then I was about to get into it, but then before I did, I said... hey, actually, you, random stranger, do you care about the ending of Avengers Infinity War? And she said, actually, I do care. I haven't seen it yet, and I was going to plug
there
my
you go.
ears if you started talking about it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, well, then we shouldn't talk about it in the theater, in the elevator, I should say.
Yeah.
And I'll be considerate and shut that
Good
down.
call.
So these two anecdotes are just to illustrate that you never know what situation people are in.
Right.
And you should always assume that people around you don't want to be spoiled and not being considerate. So your husband's a terrible person. That is my ruling.
Although, I mean, they were talking about what, last year?
Last
Yeah.
year's
Westworld, or-
Westworld, yeah.
I mean, to be fair, guys, you were talking about Avengers, like it just came out. You know, that
Yeah.
thing is still warm. The spoilers are still hot and fresh. Westworld, that's been out of the fridge. I don't know. It's still cold. It's stale. Season 1 at least. If they were talking season 2, I think it would be a bigger problem. I think it would be like,
More of a
yes, you
faux
definitely should shut up. Season 1, at one point, can you just talk to people about, pop culture, which is what we started this whole podcast to do.
Right.
It does feel like it's interesting. Like spoiler culture has taught us to quiet down and be respectful of all those things, and that's great. I think a year for something like Westworld, if you have not seen it in a year, I don't know.
I think her argument though is the fact that it's been a year, but these people don't have any they can't walk away You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah,
Like
True.
that's because
That's true.
yeah.
it's interesting. So my husband has this rule that he pulled from theater. You guys have ever heard of the 3 block rule?
Mm-mm.
Jeff Kanata.
Okay.
I have not.
So in New York,
Oh yeah,
if you go to
No, I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Okay, so in New York, if you go to a show, you don't say anything negative about it until you get 3 blocks away from the theater, because you don't know who's going to be near you. It might be a cast member's family, whatever. You don't want to be disrespectful. So you kind of keep your mouth shut. Now, my husband has extended this to movie theaters. This is how he behaves with spoilers. And in the case of movies that have just come out, he also extends it to the subway, because as he points out, we are in a tube and other people cannot get away from us.
Yep.
And
I
he
like
would
this
never
guy.
say
I
this,
like your
but
husband.
also his wife is kind of loud. So I understand this dilemma. And I like when we went to go see Infinity War, we saw it opening weekend, like it was already out, and then I was so excited to talk to him about it. And I was like, we get on the train, and I was like, okay, so what did you do? And he just gave me this look, and I was like, well, we can whisper. We literally stood whispering like 11-year-olds because he like refused, because he was like, we don't know who's on this train, hasn't seen it, and who wants
Good
to. And I
man,
was
Zach.
like, yes, yeah,
Zach's
he's
good
a better
dude.
person than I am.
Not all
It's
heroes wear
fine.
capes. Not all heroes wear
Yeah.
capes.
Yeah,
And
so
I hear that like 9 out of 10 subway cars in New York has a Mark Ruffalo on it.
not
Jake
mine
Gyllenhaal.
yet. It's very
Everywhere.
infuriating. I'm waiting that. It's like him and Jake Gyllenhaal all over the subways, but never mine.
Yeah.
But no, I totally understand her dilemma. In this situation, I can totally understand because it's been a year, but I think it is an hour before the movie, and you have people that like, if you're going to see Infinity War, you might very well want to see Westworld and maybe haven't caught up yet. I feel like it's okay to talk about it if you keep your voice down. That's the part that makes me like, you kind of have to have a trade-off.
Yeah. Okay. I have 2 things. First of all, the thing that's shocking to me is how egregious this is with film critics, because invariably film critic movie screenings that I go to, which almost always I go to by myself because my wife is home with the kids and I have to go to the screening. So I am sitting alone, and because anytime I buy a ticket to a movie, I buy an assigned seat, because that's what you can do in Los Angeles. You don't have to show up. You can show up right before. It's great. But critic screenings, there's no such thing as assigned seats, so you got to get there early. So I always get there absurdly early. I'm sitting in the theater because I want to have a good seat. And invariably, multiple people around me are like, so what other screenings have you seen this week? Oh, well, I just saw the Solo. What'd you think of it? And I'm like, my Solo screening is in 2 hours after this movie. I'm literally going to see Solo after this.
They should know better. I mean,
no,
that is your job.
Always
that is like
happens.
a specific kind of bragging that happens at those screenings where you're really just being like, I saw this movie before you did. And there's always those people.
Oh, it drives me insane. So that is one thing. And the other thing, which you guys were kind of touching on, is something I've ranted about on this show before. I don't understand. It doesn't even matter what you're talking about. You can talk about your popcorn flavoring. You can talk about whatever you want. Why are you talking full throat in a movie theater?
Yeah.
We are sitting in a room with a bunch of strangers. Talk sotto voce. Lean over to your friend and talk with respect to the fact that 400 people don't want to hear you. I don't want to hear your story about the fight you got into with your mom. I don't want to hear anything from you. I'm here either by myself and I don't want to hear anything. I just want to live in my silence for 20 minutes before this movie, or I'm with a friend or loved one and we want to not listen into your conversation. Don't talk like you're in an empty room. Don't talk like you're not sitting directly next to the person that that's listening to you. You don't have to talk so the whole room can hear you. What is wrong with people?
There's that.
All right,
it is ridiculous. This is why I walk around everywhere with just like headphones around my neck too. Like that is very helpful for those situations when you're waiting for a screen to start or something and people just won't shut up. So you plug in, listen to something else. Don't listen to anything at all. Just plug it in. You know,
yeah,
I
will do
got
that
noise
to avoid a
canceling headphones
conversation.
recently.
Yeah.
All right.
Noise canceling, nice portable ones. Those would help.
You just put the noise canceling headphones on with nothing playing in them?
You could do that. It's great.
Yeah. Just get the noise canceling on and walk around the city.
Why is the responsibility on me?
It's not, but things
are
crazy. And also, like, I know, Jeff, like, you're also more spoiler-verse than most right now. So if you really want to, like, shield yourself from any potential like spoilage. Like this is the way to go.
Oh, I plug my ears and then make eye contact.
All right.
I don't actually do that. I'm just kidding. But I do sometimes start humming to myself to try to avoid it.
And then you're the guy humming in the theater. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think what I'm hearing, if I may summarize, is from basically everyone is that, hey, just be careful. Like you're basically your husband's wrong. Okay. Whoever wrote into us, your husband's wrong. Jenna from Albuquerque. And
we're sorry about your divorce, but
your husband's wrong, and
you're mandating. We're mandating a divorce for you.
You should assume that everyone around you wants to see Westworld and just is literally about to watch it tomorrow, and they haven't caught up yet, and just behave accordingly. So,
but it doesn't matter what you're talking about. Just have respect for other people. No one wants to hear your story about the weird thing you just had surgery. Nobody wants to hear anything from you. Just be quiet.
I mean, Jeff, maybe I like eavesdropping. You never know.
Yeah.
Okay. But I agreed. If you're going to drop spoiler, like a drive-by spoiling is a really unpleasant experience, and like just try to spare people that. So, thanks to Jenna for writing in. You can always write in with your dilemmas at /filmcast@gmail.com. Before we move on, I want to thank all the people that donated to the podcast this week. Thanks to Ben from Denton, Texas, Andrew and Polly, Ben from West Virginia for your contributions. Thanks also to new subscribers Eric, Lalana, and Thomas Willas, or Willas? Willis? Anyway, thank you for contributing at the rate of $2 per month. If you want to support the Filmcast and help us defray the cost of seeing films, go to /film.com, click on the /filmcast tab, use the PayPal links on the side of the page. You can also go to paypal.me/filmcast. That's paypal.me/ and then the word filmcast. We really appreciate it when you contribute to this podcast. It really helps us out a lot. But let's get to our review of Deadpool 2. Okay. That was from the trailer for Deadpool 2, the newest Fox film that relates to a Marvel superhero / X-Man. This film was directed by David Litch, and it stars Ryan Reynolds as Deadpool, Morena Baccarin as Vanessa, and Josh Brolin as Cable. I'm going to read the plot summary from IMDb. Foul-mouthed mutant mercenary Wade Wilson, a.k.a. Deadpool, brings together a team of fellow mutant rogues to protect a young boy with supernatural abilities from the brutal time-traveling cyborg Cable. So I should also mention the gentleman who played the young boy with powers. You guys know what his name is? The guy from Hunt for the Wilder People?
Julian Dennison.
Yes, thank you, Christy. Julian Dennison is also in this movie. So, Christy Puchko, gotta ask you this question. I mean, what did you think of Deadpool 1? I don't, not sure what your thoughts are. Yeah, and were you looking forward to this one? What do you think of Deadpool 2?
So I enjoyed Deadpool 1. I was nervous about Deadpool 2 because to me, I was afraid it was going to be like Kingsman, where I really enjoyed Kingsman 1.
Mm-hmm.
But then I thought part of what I enjoyed about this was the way it upended my expectations and parodied the genre, which Deadpool did as well. And I thought when I saw Kingsman 2, oh, you did the same thing again.
Yeah,
with a couple of flourishes. And so my fear was that there was no way Deadpool 2 was going to be able to satisfy that yen again. It did not. I like things about it, but I have some major grievances.
All right. Shall we wait until spoilers to get into the grievances?
Yeah.
All right.
It's all spoiler stuff.
Sounds like a good plan. All right. How about you, Devinder Hardo? What are your thoughts on Deadpool 2?
Yeah, so I liked the original Deadpool, but I also felt like that movie was good for like the first 15 minutes, and it just kind of kept going. The best parts were the opening and like being introduced to this character in this crazy world. This movie feels more complete. This feels like a better directed and more focused film. I know exactly what Christy is probably going to bring up among the many grievances, and it's definitely an issue that this film struggles with. But at the same time, I don't think it's I think the movie is a lot more thoughtful than other I can't even say until spoilers. I think it's just more thoughtful than people expect it to be. It really goes for some emotional beats that hit me deeper than like some things in Infinity War. The action is a lot of fun. They have so much fun with this universe too. So I have to say, like, Jeff, I know you're a Marvel zombie. I feel like I'm more of an X-Men zombie. So these little nods to the X-Men universe and just seeing like Deadpool just like fuck with this this entire mythology in so many ways is a lot of fun. And I think it does it in really in fun ways too. Like it's not as overbearing as the first movie because I think it modulates Deadpool's like zaniness and also like combines that with good action, great characters. Like there's like a big mission, a big like heist sequence or something that they've planned. And it doesn't go like any superhero film or any action film that you've seen before. And I like those things. Like it clearly knows what it's doing, and it knows that we as the audience are kind of tired of seeing the same old shit again and again. And it goes for something different. So I appreciated that. And we get a lot to talk about in spoilers because I like the way they clean up the timeline over here.
Jeff Kanata, take us through your thoughts on Deadpool 2.
Yeah, I really loved the first Deadpool. Like I think all of us did. It really felt like this fun breath of fresh air that was skewering something that became very ubiquitous in the movie theaters. You know, the superhero genre. And it felt like this really cool subversive take on that. And like Christy, I was a little worried about it being repeatable. And I definitely share your feelings, Christy, with regard to Kingsman 2. Kingsman was so great. And boy, was I let down by Kingsman 2. And I was very worried through the first, third of this movie because it really does not start strong, in my opinion. I think the second half of Deadpool 2 is far better than the first half of it. And really redeemed the movie for me in a large sense. I ended up having a lot of fun with Deadpool 2. It doesn't feel like the crazy breath of fresh air that the first one did, but then I guess kind of how could it? You know, we had that fresh air and now we're just in that air, I guess. But there used to be a time where we had movies like Naked Gun and Hot Shots, and The Airplane.
I like how you're fondly looking back at like Hot Shots of all things.
I mean, they were dumb. They were dumb movies, but I loved them, and probably because I was of an age that they were, directly my sensibility as a, like a 12-year-old doofus.
I watched Hot Shots Part 2 too many times. Many times.
I watched those obsessively. The Naked Gun movies, especially, over and over.
And those jokes, like you're a kid, you memorize those jokes. They're like become part of your comic sensibility as a preteen. And while this is a rated R movie, it has that sensibility, and it has that sensibility in skewering movies that I think are the big blockbusters of the day, in the way that Hot Shots was skewering Rambo and et cetera. So we don't really have those kinds of movies anymore, and it's cool that Deadpool is just doing that, But I also agree with you, Devindra, that I was really surprised that this movie took on a more serious, kind of heartfelt, honest attempt at telling a story. And
it's about hashtag family, guys, and I love those movies.
But I was even more surprised how successfully it managed to do that. And like you, I kind of got a little wispy by the end. Or I'm not putting that on you. I mean, but I enjoyed that, and I got a little wispy at the end. And I was surprised at how well that worked. I didn't think it worked in the first half, which really lays in heavily on that side of it and feels really slow, and it takes a long time for the wheels get churning on this movie. But once they do, and like you said, that amazing heist sequence there, this movie squarely takes on the Rob Liefeld-ification of the X-Men, and does so hilariously and so irreverently that I laughed a heck of a lot. I mean, the fact that you have, I don't know, the fact that there are characters in this movie, a spoiler, maybe
let's
they are.
Let's
I will say this. Do not, if you haven't seen Deadpool 2 yet and you don't want spoilers, don't look at the IMDb page, because literally the cast
they're all over. Like secret cameos are on the first page.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate. But I had a lot of fun. I ended up having a lot of fun with it. I don't think it's as good a movie as the first one, or as a consistent a movie perhaps as the first one. But I think ultimately the second half won me over in such a big way that I think it's going to be a crowd pleaser, and it's just funny. It's funny and dumb and smart at the same time.
I think it's totally fine. Deadpool 2. It's totally acceptable. It's funny, But I think where it falls flat for me is it tries to be a quote unquote real movie. You know, unlike the first one, I felt like the first one was kind of like an origin story that introduced Deadpool and had a couple of follow-up action scenes, basically, and that's it. And it mostly coasted on its attitude and its humor and its style, and that was completely enough for that movie to break out in a big way. And Deadpool 2 tries to drape all that over a real movie, the sort of trappings of a legitimate film with a story arc and a big plot line that you're
how dare it, Dave?
Well, I'm just saying I don't think it. I think it. I think it makes for a really odd pairing. I think it's making fun of all these tropes from superhero films, and ultimately it becomes the thing that it's making fun of. You know, the first one was a fairly generic superhero film, and this one is also a fairly generic superhero film, and in terms of the plot. And I think that kind of it's odd to have a tone that's very irreverent, but then also they want you to feel really invested, and I just didn't feel like those things jived super well for me. Let me ask you this question, though, before we move to spoilers. Jeff Kanata, I think you're probably most familiar with the comics. Like, to me, it feels like Deadpool is at his best when he's like a side character, right? When he's kind of commenting on all, like, I could see a movie that's like the X-Men where it's like an earnest plot, but where there's this Deadpool character who's breaking the fourth wall and commenting every now and then. And it feels like much weirder to have him be the center of the storyline. And I'm curious, like, what your experience has been with Deadpool in the comics.
Well, he has had his own comic numerous times, and and I think he plays like the sidekick in his own stories in a lot of ways. Like he's wink, wink, nudge, nudge, commenting on the thing you're watching, even as he's starring in it. So I think for my money, they pull that off pretty well in the sense that he feels like this also ran in a universe that is larger than he, but somehow, you know, he's alongside it going, this is crazy. Isn't this universe crazy? Oh, by the way, this is my story, but isn't this universe crazy? I think they managed to pull that off pretty well.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. Well, lots to talk about in spoilers, so let's dive into it. But overall, it sounds like we thought it was pretty enjoyable with some pretty significant caveats. Let's dive into spoilers for Deadpool 2 starting right now. All right. Christy,
and the camera turns to Christy.
I know you have some thoughts, Christy. I want to get to them, but before we do that, I do want to comment on one thing, which is I thought the marketing head fake was fairly brilliant, right? In this, so Jeff, you don't watch trailers, but if you did, you would have seen that the trailers basically make it seem like X-Force is going to be this huge deal in this film, right?
That's so smart of them to do.
Yeah, and they actually filmed extra scenes for the trailer that they purposefully knew would never make it into the film. Like,
yeah,
I love that.
They filmed scenes that they like, and they made it seem like X-Force is going to be this huge factor, and like that's what this movie is going to be about. And then, of course, they kill off X-Force within like 3 minutes of you meeting them, and in the most
funny, graphic
and brutal ways possible. And it is amazing and funny and subversive, and I thought it was delightful. So.
I think I could do probably a 2-hour podcast just on Shatterstar.
Because he sucks. He does suck, and I love that this movie understands that.
And the fact that they put him in the ridiculous Rob Liefeld padded face thing that Rob somehow wants to always draw on people is so great, and he gives him the enormous impractical ponytail.
Yeah.
It is, and how they just punks out. I love that. I loved how irreverent it was with all that, and the fact that they cast, you know, like recognizable people to, to be those some of those parts. Terry Crews, for example.
Brad Pitt plays the Vanisher.
Yeah. Well, I mean that's a great gag and a great reveal.
Half
but
a second.
Yeah. I don't know. I loved how they handled X-Force. I thought it was the best part of the entire movie for me.
Yeah, I did too. I thought that was that whole sequence that, like, from when they jump off the gangplank to like the rescue and the whole deal. I thought that was all really great. I think it's the best part of the movie.
We should also say, I think Domino wins MVP of this film for me. I mean, not only is she an amazing presence, but also the idea of a superhero whose skill is luck, I thought was really brought to life in a.
Dave, let me tell you, I have dreamed about this moment for so long. Like just reading X-Men comics, because as they say in the movie, that's not cinematic.
They have a whole argument about it.
Yeah. But first of all, Zazie Beetz from Atlanta is fantastic in this role. She just fully embodies the character. But yeah, they do such a great job of setting up what just kind of how you would envision her character and her power. So so much props to that. And I love that she is one of the surviving members because I want to see more of this character.
Yeah, she's from the show Atlanta. Sounds like you're like Zazie Beetz from Atlanta, Well,
that's what I'm talking about, Atlanta. But yeah.
All right.
Yeah,
Christy,
I thought she was great, and I think she's a good parody, or not parody, but foil to Deadpool and his energy. From the moment they fight about whether luck is a superpower, and then all of her action sequences, they kind of feel like James Bond movies and stuff, because Bond does stuff that you're like, okay, but really though, and it's just she gets to smirk and be like, yeah, because luck, deal with it.
Yeah, it's totally it's totally comparable to some of the stuff that, particularly the later Pierce Brosnan Bond does, really insane stuff.
Within the context of the movie, it makes sense because it feels like a parody of action scenes in these movies where you're like, wait, even as much as I want to suspend my disbelief, can we? And I thought that was all very fun. I think she's brilliantly cast. I thought she was great.
Yeah, I have the biggest crush on Zazie Beetz, but I also thought the character of Peter was so wonderful with Rob Delaney playing Peter. Yeah. Oh, that's just inspired that idea of just we're getting the team together, and also a regular guy is going to be.
I love how nobody, is like, oh, we're gonna jump from a plane. No one's so saying good. No. They're just going along.
So funny.
All right, Christy, I think you have some thoughts on this film that I'm pretty sure I will agree with. So you had some critiques that you wanted to bring up in spoiler section, right?
Yeah, I hate they killed Vanessa. I hate it. I fucking hate it. I don't care that they undo it at the end. I hate it. Because I feel like in superhero movies, as much as I enjoy watching them, often what feels flat is the romantic relationship. And in Deadpool, I believed that Wade and Vanessa were into each other. I believed that they loved each other, that they liked each other, and that they wanted to have sex with each other. It all felt very authentic and so fun and so alive, and it made the stakes of that movie feel really important. So then when she shows up in this and she's like, I want to have your baby, I'm like, no, because it's that moment in every war movie where the guy's like, I got a great girl back home, here's a picture of her.
It's my last day, I'm ready to ship back home or whatever.
Right. It's my last day on the job. Exactly. Retirement's just around the corner. It's that thing. And I was like, no. And then she gets shot, and I hated it. And I understand the arguments that Rhett Reese and Paul Wernick have made about why they did that. And storytelling wise, it makes sense. You have to take something away from him, so he has to rebuild himself, yada, yada. I get it. But on one level, it killed this central relationship that I cared a lot about. And I frankly am in mourning for a huge section of the movie where I'm just kind of numb to what's going on, because what is this now? What have you done? And I get that they try to have fun with it by having that musical number where they do the Bond style credits where Deadpool is like the sexy lady. And I think it is inspired that it's a Celine Dion song. I think that's really smart. But it still hurts. I'm still mad. And I wasn't able to have fun with this movie until it gets to the sequence with the X-Force kicks into gear. And that's a long time. So for a huge stint of this movie, it's just not working for me because I'm just bummed. And I feel like they totally didn't read the room on that. And I wanted to think that they were trying to do something more clever than that tired fridging trope, which we all know what fridging is, or should I explain?
Yeah, please explain fridging for those who might not know.
Okay, so fridging is Gail Simone originally referred to women in refrigerators. It refers back to a Green Lantern comic from the 90s where Green Lantern's girlfriend was killed by a villain and put in a fridge, literally. And it's effectively... what it means is when you take a female character and she solely exists in a story so that she can be either tortured or raped or killed so that the male hero can feel bad about it. And Vanessa was a very important figure in the first movie. And in this movie, she exists to be sexy, say she wants a baby, and die. And yes, she comes back in flashbacks or whatever, but she exists so that Deadpool has feelings. She doesn't exist as a character unto herself. And it's just very frustrating. And then it's Cable's wife and daughter are only introduced to die. So it's just very frustrating that they played into like one of the most frustrating comic tropes there is. And they did an interview with Vulture where they said that they didn't know that was even a thing.
Yeah.
Fridging was not a word they had heard before. And that made me really furious because while we wrote about it for Pajiba and some of our readers were like, well, I've never heard of that word. And it's like, that's fine. You're not someone who's being paid an insane amount of money to write a comic book movie that is supposed to subvert these tired tropes.
Right.
Like they should know better. So
yeah,
that's
and
very
the fact
frustrating.
that they didn't make fun of it. I mean, they were playing it honestly. That part of the movie is legit and trying to be heartfelt. There's no gag about that trope. It is just we're using that for our plot.
That's the whole joke afterwards is like all the credits afterwards are like, you didn't seriously just kill her. Like they kind of try to make light of it right away while still owning that this is a harrowing thing where like now Deadpool literally wants to kill himself. It's just, I couldn't get on board and it didn't make it fun for me. Yeah. And then I don't know. I had a hard time getting into it. And like, I really like Julian Dennison and Hunt for the Wilder People. So I was like, I kept trying to kind of re-engage because I wanted to enjoy this movie. But it's like, it felt like it just kept being like, I'm not going to be the thing you want. And like, I was really struggling. Like, you know, I was really excited to see Negasonic Teenage Warhead again, but she gets nothing to do really. Like
she gets less to do in this film than the first film.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And so that's frustrating. It just felt like they are trying to do so many things in this movie because they're trying to do the Deadpool story. They're trying to bring in Cable. They're trying to set up X-Force. They need to get rid of Vanessa. They need to create this redemption. There's so much going on that I felt like I was missing out on these emotional beats because they're just cramming it all in. So that was very vexing. And also at some point I was just like, oh, this is just Looper. Like it's Deadpool plugged into Looper.
Basically. It is funny that this movie is directed by David Leitch, who did Atomic Blonde, and the thrust of that movie is her guy is killed, and she has to go like figure out what happened there. I hear you, Christy. I totally hear like everything you're saying too, because it is an annoying and tired trope. I love Marina Baccarin as an actress, like ever since Firefly, and I feel like she should be a bigger star and she should be a bigger presence in these movies. Something that annoyed me from the first movie, though, is that as great as their relationship was, I feel like that movie basically, she was the damsel in distress, like talking about tired tropes, like, I can see that. The whole thing of the first movie is him saving her. And the end, like, I believe, like, she had a role in saving herself, too, and that was great. But
I would even go farther than that, Devindra. I would say in the first movie, like, I agree with what you guys are saying about this movie with regard to Vanessa, but I felt like in the first movie, she was also basically just his best fantasy. Like everything that Deadpool would want, she was, and nothing more. Like she needed nothing from him other than to be exactly what he wanted.
Well, I really like their relationship though, because it is, yes, she was definitely the dream girl, but also it's Marina Baccarin. The way they wrote her and the chemistry between them, I think really sold it. Even though like she as a character in the first movie existed to be like this perfect, the perfect girl for him and the one, that he had to save. At the same time, like we saw him giving a little too, like just what they do, their sex play in the first movie is something you never see really in movies like this, and honestly in movies in America in general. So yeah, I was really bummed to see her go. And Raquel, my wife, was sitting right next to me, and she was really sad too because she also loves Marina Baccarin. At the very least, I think I'm glad the movie didn't like the credit sequences did like poke fun at like how you're feeling as an audience about what just happened. I don't think the movie truly made light of this thing because it is, for that first half of the movie, it is like treating it seriously. And it is really interesting to see like a character like this be kind of beaten down at that point. But I see what you're saying too, Dave. Like those jumping between different tones is really jarring and really tough to swallow sometimes.
It just didn't, the mix of tones just did not work for me. And it's particularly acute at the end of the film when they have that big moment where Deadpool jumps in front of the bullet and kind of, and like you're supposed to believe that this moment like transforms the child on into a completely different path. And it's so silly, and it's fine that it's silly. It's very enjoyable and humorous. I get it, but it's like then don't expect me to really emotionally invest in this thing. That like it just doesn't. Yeah, It didn't.
What I'm saying
It didn't work for me. Like
I know it doesn't work for you,
Yeah.
and honestly, Dave, like knowing your tastes, like I know that is the sort of thing that really gets your goat.
Yep.
You know,
Yep,
just
totally.
in general.
Totally. Let me just put this out there though. It's just that like I think if the ending had worked like if stripping away the meta commentary and the jokes, like if the ending had worked on a dramatic level, I think the movie would have been better. And you can
what do you? So wait, now we're moving beyond Vanessa. You're talking directly about the ending. Him saving
Julian
the kid
Dennison,
and everything.
that character, and
that feels like a whole different conversation because I do think that really worked for me.
Okay, fair enough. But with regards to Vanessa, I completely agree with everything Christy said, and is very upsetting. So
I see it. I totally see it. What you're saying. As for the ending, though, like that's the sort of thing I'm talking about. Like I do think like it really sold the fact that this is a truly selfless act. He put on the collar. He has no more powers. He's going to save the kid to show the kid that somebody would throw their lives away for him. Mm-hmm. And that by doing so would save the kid. That felt something. That made me feel something.
I mean,
he spent like what 5 or 10 minutes dying. Then they made fun of it, but also like it. Then Cable goes and does the thing where he uses his last shot, to kind of reboot this sequence, and that kind of just drove it home for me. Like we knew he wasn't really gonna die. But what who's going to sacrifice what? And the fact that Cable, this gruff Terminator guy from the future, gives up his one chance to go back home to do this, like that all worked together for me. At least.
I feel completely the opposite. Like none of that worked. None of that worked at all. I mean,
but why? So
none of it was set up. Like why does he have this sudden change of heart at the end? It's not explained at all. It's played off as a joke. I don't think it works at all. Christy, you had some thoughts as well, right?
Yeah, like I understand intellectually and story-wise why Russell has a change of heart at the end, but I feel like there are not enough moments between him and Deadpool.
Agreed, yes.
To feel that relationship. Yep. Like I get that, I understand because the way they're paralleling the story is that Russell is the kid that he felt like when he was younger, and if he had only had a positive role model, and I get all that. There's a lot of doubles for Deadpool in this because Cable's a double for Deadpool and Russell's a double for Deadpool, and I get it. Like I understand the storytelling, I can understand the structure, but when it comes down to it, like I understood more why Russell was friends with the Juggernaut than why he was friends with Deadpool.
Yeah,
but genuinely,
agreed.
Because
agreed,
like
100%.
Deadpool went from threatening him with like a gun to like shooting a guy, and then he's like, "We're best friends," and I was like, I don't. Okay, like it felt like a scene or something was missing. Like I just didn't invest in their relationship the way I wanted to. I just feel like it's just there's too much going on, and it leaves me to be like, I like parts of this movie, but as a whole, I did not find it as satisfying.
Mm-hmm. And further, like you were talking about, like why did Cable make that choice at the end? And for just the way I'm reading it, it is the thing, like he noticed like the doll, the rabbit doesn't have blood anymore, so you saved your daughter, you accomplished your goal. But like this one act of like I don't know selflessness of him to save this guy who helped him accomplish his goal, I kind of bought that. Like they have this begrudging relationship by the end, even though we spend so much of the movie of them literally trying to kill each other. I bought their banter and their feelings toward each other by the end. But it's tough. Yeah, it's the sort of thing like if I can't tell you how to feel, basically. It made me feel the way that way. Yeah.
But Christy, I think you and I are really like jiving in terms of our thoughts of this movie. Like the many aspects of it did not work for me, even though overall I did have a good time. But let me bring it to more positive, right? And say that two things that I really liked. First of all, I thought the whole design and execution of the Cable character was really well done. Like
so perfect, yeah.
Like visually compelling and unlike anything we've seen in any other Marvel film. Which I think like at the end of 10 years of Marvel films and like 19 movies, it's like they've exhausted every visual idea. And this movie shows that nope, they haven't. Like there's still interesting ways to spin it. I think like Cable's arm looks better and more interesting than like Winter Soldier's arm. You know what I mean? Like. I think just the way they brought that character to life was really well done.
It's mainly Brolin and the graveliness and the way he sells the character too. Like it's And
it's a
we
very
don't go
different
into,
performance than than,
you never feel like you're watching Thanos. which is
exactly.
pretty
Yeah.
great.
Yeah. It's very good.
It's
very
also like in a movie where you have a bunch of big burly dudes, because there's Colossus and there's Cable and there's Juggernaut, and like he feels distinct. Like even the design, like because you literally have a giant Iron Man in this movie, but the design, like the cyborg design, still feels distinct and still feels of a different time. And I thought that was all really well done.
Yeah. And then the only other thing I just want to say is that I'm very grateful that this movie exists. I think if Marvel owned Deadpool, this movie might never exist, or it would be in a really different form. It wouldn't be as irreverent. It wouldn't take as many chances with the humor. And it's so interesting to see how different studios are doing different things with these Marvel characters and in completely different styles. And
but we had this conversation around Deadpool 1.
Yeah.
It is an act of pure desperation from Fox, right? Like they
like what do they have to
fucked
lose
up
with
X-Men
this character?
so badly that okay, Logan was good, and the success of Deadpool helped make Logan an R-rated movie and a thing, and that ended up being pretty big. But yeah, they destroyed the X-Men. So this is part
they
of
stripped it for parts and like milked it dry. It is dead.
This is the chop shop of the X-Men. Yeah, and I will say these are my favorite X-Men movies. These two Deadpool movies, because why not have some fun with it then? Like if you. This Juggernaut is the third version of Juggernaut we've seen in the so-called X-Men cinematic universe?
Oh, I thought it was the second, but I could be wrong.
I thought Vinnie Jones was the first.
Who
And
was it aside from Vinnie Jones?
Yeah,
maybe it's only
Vinnie
two,
Jones.
but it certainly feels like what is even. I can't track where we are and who's what, and it doesn't. And like that's what's I think enjoyable about it is that this movie says it doesn't matter and let's just have fun. And go ahead.
I was just to the what does it doesn't matter thing. That's actually something that really frustrates me, because the other thing that the screenwriter said in the interview with Vulture is that like it doesn't matter that they killed Vanessa because they knew they could undo it in the end credits. And it's just like, cool. So this whole story doesn't matter. Like, it's just, I know it doesn't undo everything because Deadpool knows about Russell, so he could still go back and save Russell and stuff. But it just felt like kind of a fuck you to the audience to like, yeah, we know you endured all this, but like, finger snap, it's gone. Like, I just.
Preview for the next Avengers movie, everybody.
I'm gonna put this out there. I'm gonna put this out there. Okay, like Avengers: Infinity War. All right, I'm not gonna spoil. This is extremely minor spoiler that some characters die in Avengers: Infinity War. I'm not gonna say any more than that. And I think that the next Avengers is gonna deal with that in a much more thoughtful way than how this film, Deadpool 2, dealt with the death of Vanessa. Like,
well, yeah, but. I don't know. I'm agreeing with you guys about Vanessa. I'm not disagreeing with you guys. I guess I'm approaching this much more like a movie like Airplane or Naked Gun, where it really. I guess I forgive it those trespasses more in the sense that it's just about setting up the next gag, and we're really just taking shots at everything. And I agree that it's very poorly handled with Vanessa. I think that it is clumsy and she's a character that completely gets sidelined for no good reason whatsoever. And like I said, the whole beginning of the movie where it just indulges in that and expects you to feel something about it really feels slow and such a slog. But I will say, for some reason, at the end, when you see real Ryan Reynolds walk through that little, Morphe force field, I felt something. I was like, oh, it's kind of sweet. So I don't know. Maybe I'm being hypocritical here, but I do think the movie is clumsy. But I feel like the fun I'm having along the way by the end makes up for it.
All right. Well, I think we can wrap it up there.
Well, a couple other things. Just want to mention real quick. I do like the fact that this movie can play more with the X-Men universe. Like we get like a brief shot of the X-Men crew just saying, I don't want to hang out with this guy. Like, which
that is such a great moment. Like, I want to know how they pulled that off. If that is somehow weird stock footage that they used.
No, they talked about it. They had to shoot them in different waves and stuff. There's an interview out there. I forget which one.
Funny.
That's crazy. And also, like, come on, we're not going to end this review without talking about the X-Men Origins Wolverine scene.
Yeah.
Which I think, like, the fact that, you say what you will about this movie. I'm very glad it exists.
Yeah.
Just for that reason. Just to say, like, no, we're
Well,
not going to let this sit.
Not
Yeah.
even
Right.
that. I think the Green Lantern script moment is even
Oh yeah,
more
that was great.
unbelievable.
That was great too. But like just seeing Hugh Jackman back in this movie and seeing him like as the worst, him in the worst Wolverine movie, I guess. Like it was.
Yeah.
I did not expect that. I did not
Like
Here's
expect
the
jokes
comment.
like that I
Yeah.
thought were great. The jokes
Yeah.
that actually were like playing on something. What bummed me out were when it was just a reference, like when he
Mhm.
just calls him Thanos or when he like cites what the Hulk says. I was like, that's not really a joke. You're just making the audience go, I know that reference. Like,
Yeah,
but like
that
those
was a
were, like,
really good,
legit-
well-timed reference of what the sun is coming down or whatever.
Oh, so
Yeah,
funny. Yeah.
It just, but like when it just felt like it's there to be like, it reminds me of like I went to a stand-up comedy show once, and this
Mhm.
kid, the whole bit was that the MC was like in 6th grade, like he was literally a 6th grader, and he got up on stage and he goes, "Hey everybody, remember the Spin Doctors?" And like the audience cheered, like, "Yeah, I remember the Spin Doctors." And he goes, "I wasn't alive when they were popular," and it made fun of us because you cheered for something that was not even a joke. And it's like, I think
Right.
about that a lot whenever I'm like, oh, that's not a joke. That's just a reference. I'm just
Family
excited.
Guy made a
because
whole
it's
series
entertaining.
out of that.
Yeah,
Yes, I know.
Christy,
I'm not a fan.
I would, yeah. I mean, first of all, the image of you just sitting there hating that stand-up comic does
No,
tickle
I
me a
thought
little
he
bit.
was brilliant, but then I was like, I am ashamed of myself because yes, I just cheer like.
Oh, it
the
would
Spin
fill me
Doctors
with
are great.
rage. I would be really pissed about it. So
Well, anybody cheering for the Spin Doctors, even when they were big, should fill you with rage.
exactly.
Agreed. Okay. Well, anyway, yeah. Jeff, this is another comic book question. Sorry to put you on the spot on this one, but like in X-Men Origins Wolverine, and maybe Devindra or Christy might know this too.
Mhm.
Like the version of Deadpool that we got in that movie, which is a terrible version, was that like based on anything in the comics?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, it
Yes.
was
Yes.
with the stitched
The,
up
like-
mouth and everything. Like,
Yep. Mm-hmm.
okay,
Yes.
okay.
He has been in the similar way to the movies. He has been retconned in the comics. He was sort of a serious character at first, and then he became this irreverent fourth wall breaking character. In the hands of gifted writers whose names are escaping me at the moment, but I should look that up. Yeah, I mean, it started out as a serious, in the era of anti-heroes and dark. Everybody had to be dark. Dark was code for good in a few years there in the late 90s, and it definitely he morphed as well.
Gotcha.
As,
yeah. So it is based on something. They didn't just like butcher it with, but it obviously
They did
doesn't play
butcher
to
it,
it
but
doesn't play to
still.
the character's strengths, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Man,
Yeah. It was pretty bad, and I'm glad. Like this, I would argue that this movie actually does go a long way towards allowing us to put that version of Deadpool behind us.
yeah, bury the past, kill it if you have to. Yeah.
Agreed. Agreed. All right, folks, let's wrap it up. Stay tuned to hear Obi reviewing next week.
Hey, wait a minute. I
oh.
just want to point out, I just laughed at something that was not a joke. It was just a reference.
Yeah,
I mean,
Sorry.
it happens. It doesn't mean it's a joke.
it's
yeah.
about timing.
That's like I get it. I mean, I sat in an audience where people kept cheering every time there was a reference to any comic book thing.
Right.
And like sometimes it's genuinely funny. Like when he makes fun of Cable and he's like, "Oh my
Yeah.
god, you're so dark, you belong in the DCEU." Like that
Yeah.
makes sense. That's actually a reference that is like a joke about something. It's
So
not
good.
just a reference.
I will say that my biggest laugh of the movie was seeing Hugh Jackman's face in the scene. I know this scene. Oh God.
Yeah.
that
But
was-
again, like that's actually there's a purpose to that. Like I had no problem with those things. I don't have a problem with illusions, and I get that that's Deadpool's whole thing. But I got frustrated when I was like just sitting there and people were laughing. I'm like, but it's just a quote. That's not even okay.
Yeah.
Like I don't know. I just felt like people are so excited that I don't know. Again, I like a lot about this movie, but I am
The movie
conflicted.
was worse about that too, of just relying on like quotes and fun irreverency. So yeah.
I definitely agree. I mean, there's member berries, right? Member berries aren't jokes in and of themselves, but sometimes, like what Devindra just did, the juxtaposition of the reference with the situation is creating something new, is creating a funny juxtaposition. But I don't know.
Mhm.
It's debate for a different time.
All right, folks. Stay tuned to your OB reviewing next week. Find more episodes of this podcast at /filmcast.com. Email us at /filmcast@gmail.com. Our spoiler bumper comes from filmmaker Kyle Hillinger. Our /filmcourt music comes from simonmharris.com. And our theme song comes from adamwarrock.com. Christy Puchko, where can people find more of your work on the internet this week?
I write every day at bajiba.com. I can be found on Twitter at Christy Puchko, KristyPuchko. And you can find career highlights at decadentcriminals.com. And I've got some good Deadpool stuff up there and some other goodies that I've been working on.
Very cool. Jeff Kanata, where can people find more of your work on the internet this week?
You can always follow me on Twitter at Jeff Kanata, which is spelled with 2 N's and 1 T. I do a video game podcast called DLC that you can find at 5by5.tv/DLC. And I do a comedy science show, which is 20 minutes long, easy to listen to. You probably learn something, and will likely just make a reference. But I think they're fun episodes. Check it out at wehaveconcerns.com.
And Devindra Hardwar.
Oh, I'm on Twitter at Devindra, and I write about tech at Engadget.com.
Find me on Twitter at Dave Chensky, that's Dave Chen SKY, and also on YouTube at youtube.com/Dave Chensky, that's Dave Chen SKY. Next week, we'll be reviewing Solo. I know that review will be completely uncontroversial, and we won't get any bad feedback about that. So look forward to that, guys. Thanks for listening to the Slash Filmcast. We'll see you next week.